How are legends brought anew? How do you spread a king's legacy? Is written and published by A Fluid Melody on Archive of Our Own. We highly suggest reading the original. Not only does it support and encourage the author, it also brings clarity, as neither of your narrators can speak English apparently. Have fun! How are legends brought anew? How do you spread a king's legacy? In which legends never die, even in worlds that never knew them. A man who dedicated his life to entertainment gains a fan who enjoys his fandom's creativity. She sees no reason to stop enjoying them. Chapter 1. Through Memory. In a quiet village, a wide-brimmed hat flopped rhythmically between an anvil and a counter, its wearer difficult to make out in the dim lava light. Thanatos escaped his chains, refused the mortal's call, and Theseus found forgiveness in their eyes. It's not his fault. Tortured Agamemnon thus proclaimed himself a god, and Phrixus saw his savior seeking someone called a fraud. She was also singing with her head low, unaware of the baffled blacksmith behind her that had just returned from his walk. No, this wasn't a joke. Gallius had more taste than that, though he was seriously questioning if he was staring at the lost child of a merchant? Minstrel? He hadn't heard of any humans entering the village, so she must be recent. Judging from her height, she was 15-ish? 16 at the least. And I am still Prometheus. I thought I broke the chains, but I can't ignore, not anymore, this all-consuming pain. With 1,000-fold thread I always follow through. I'll bring fires of vengeance long overdue. She wasn't moving from her current spot. Aside from brushing a hand on his anvil's surface, Gallius wasn't seeing much tampering or anything to indicate breaking and entering. What thief sang in the open? If anything, she sounded lost in thought, nostalgia layered between breaths. It was a feeling he could relate to, especially when Thalius was involved. Is this my limbo to be torn apart? Not by crows or eagles, but still losing my heart. The dealings of the mortals were not made for these eyes, but now you lay before me this tragedy of mine. He couldn't say the same for her choice in music. The grieving and vengeful lyrics, beyond being too dark for his tastes, reminded him of his twin's temperament. Granted, Thalius wasn't as introspective or sincere as the original songwriter, so for all he knows, he's projecting after their latest chat. Gods of death and bloodshed have always been my kind, so forgive if I forget how fragile mortals are sometimes. I forgot that if I cared too much, then I'd be rendered blind. Titans never die, that's not the fate of mortal kind. On second thought, Thalius absolutely fits the first part. Death and bloodshed indeed. Oh, goddess, did you welcome him with arms open wide? Did you give him needed rest or leave him haunted and deprived? Oh, death, where is your sting? Isn't the mentor supposed to die? And now only the chorus sings this tragedy of mine. Well, easy on Gallius's ears. Her performance wasn't going to solve the hefty load in his arms, giving a slight cough before speaking. "Hello?" There's a pause as she spins around, his markings playing tricks with her face. If he hadn't known better, he'd think her eyes were made of crystal.
My apologies for that.
Her voice belayed a startling maturity in contrast to her youth.
I should have asked first. Do you need help with that?
Before he could refuse, his bag was gently placed onto the counter like a feather, with his visitor next to him in the sun, getting a tiny jump from the startled Ardoni.
Are you all right?
Gallius wasn't much of a traveler like Thalius, but he knew his material, and that bag was made to suit his natural stature. That she carried what was roughly 2/3 of her weight, and diamond and gold, with her vision obscured, was nixing his original assumptions on her. "I'm fine, don't worry about it. Just don't do it again, please." She laughed, offering a hand.
Agreed. I'm Joyce, and yes, my face doesn't match my age. I take it as a compliment.
Her eyes glittered in good humor at the Sandaris' blush.
I get that a lot. You could say my job keeps me young.
He took it, finding a grip as firm as his own. "Gallius Sandaris, are you a minstrel?" That was well sung. Ignoring the discomfort it brought him, it was a welcome distraction from brooding thoughts. As always, Thalius couldn't leave without having the last word.
Crafter, weaving, smithing, anything that's creative. I love making ideas come to life, and sticking to only one profession wasn't for me.
Ambitious. But it's not like Gallius could talk, with how he worked on obsidian for the end. It was odd he didn't feel any calluses or scars, but her hand had been like his, strong and steady after years of hard work. "What brought you here?" Folding his arms, Gallius took advantage of the light to properly examine Joyce, noting her almond-shaped eyes and muted yet finely wrought attire. There was nothing striking about her face. It was quite plain, but Gallius had taught many Ardoni and recognized the telltale hints of a woman experienced in combat. They were little things, like how the warmth in her eyes were encased in steel, scrutinizing him as he did her, and the strength in both her upper and lower body, but together they painted a reliable picture. Sensible, considering the world they lived in.
I was returning home after visiting an old friend, only to catch sight of old memories. It's been long since I saw my brother's homeland.
Her voice dipped as her eyes dimmed, wistful and somber.
My family has been split for so long that I found myself adrift in better days, forgetting where I was. Even now I can hear Rin laughing in my forge, throwing puns left and right.
Gallius stayed silent and understanding, letting his guest collect herself. There was no law against it, but an Ardoni adopting a human was an awkward affair compared to their respective lifespans. The knowledge of outliving your loved ones was always a tragedy, no matter how well prepared you were. One Gallius was intimately aware of with how Thalius' single-minded drive threw him into the thick of it. For all they thought, the risk of one day finding a stranger returning his brother's sword made for no small number of sleepless nights, dripping with sweat from nightmares and relentless what-ifs.
Do you have a brother? The normality in Joyce's question provided refuge from Gallius's inner turmoil, one he gladly exploited.
Many. No sisters, I'm afraid. Only rambunctious brothers from my poor mother.
Including Athalius?
She gave a weighty stare.
He's been bothering my northern relatives and scaring the children with his antics. I tried talking, but it's like speaking to a brick wall.
Northern? He made sure to keep abreast of the news, and what he heard had driven his latest argument with his brother, worries of brigands flooding Gallius's mind. As usual, Thalius ignored it in favor of his obsession, but for Joyce's family to be bothered, they must live further in the wilderness. With growing dread, Gallius imagined Thalius heading to a kingdom dealing with a surge and outlaws, and was undoubtedly in a foul mood from the lack of Altaris blood on his blade. His stubborn, secretive little brother had been growing more and more frustrated from chasing naught but scuttlebutt, and was a towering behemoth compared to the average human, traversing mind-numbing cold and blinding blizzards. Combining all of that with even the slightest provocation or hint of red from a distance, like clothing or redstone, and Thalius could have easily snapped. On his behalf, I apologize. It is no excuse for what he did, but I don't know what else to make up for it. The next time they talked, Gallius had words for his possibly criminal twin.
I don't hold his actions against you, but I would prefer if he stopped coming by. My nibblings in particular want his head for all he did, and I can't promise to stop them.
The songmaster frowned, his lips a thin line. I already tried. Like you said, he's a brick wall, only listening to what he wants to hear. I can try again when he comes by, but I'm not sure it'll work. Oh, Thalius was willing to concede at times, but not this one. Despite 30 years, he still dived into the fray and made innocents suffer for it. If he didn't have one nether of a reason behind this, then Gallius was tempted to dump him at Hailstone's gates if it meant smacking some sense into his skull. Joyce dipped her head.
I understand. Brothers can be thick-headed even when you logic them.
That got a chuckle from Gallius, breaking through his tense shoulders.
I'm sorry, but I need to head home. I gave my nephew a gift and he'll have questions for it.
Questions? She gave an embarrassed smile, throwing up her hands.
I didn't explain much when I left. A bit cryptic in hindsight. It doesn't help that my departure wasn't planned.
Gallius stifled a laugh. Well, don't let me stop you. Farewell, Joyce. Next time, let's meet somewhere nicer than my forge. Her smile matched the sun.
If you're ever nearby, I'll make sure to stock my tables.
As she meandered out of his sight, Gallius turned back to his forge. Spirits lightened from the encounter. A bit strange and headache-inducing, true, but it was exactly what he needed to get through the day. My hound's at the ready, they pulled at the leash. I tried to bring fire and do what I preach. Did I fall in love a shadow? Did I lose a flame it's from? Is all fair in love and war? That said, he still disagreed with her musical tastes. I gave you a home, but they took you away. This tragedy of mine. Chapter 2. Through Insight. Or Not. Taking refuge in a cramped cave, Thalius silently reflected that maybe, just maybe, Gallius had a point about the weather.
The wind brings a chill into hearts of men who fight for a king who cares not for them. It's time to take back all that we have lost, bring forth revolution.
Huddled by a fire lit at the entrance, the scarred champion listened intently for even the slightest trace of his quarry amidst the unsilent night. Despite decades of silence, he refused to believe they simply dropped off the face of the earth and was determined to prove it.
Too long I've resisted in silence the voices that echo inside of my head. They yearn for the violence and bloodshed. I think at long last I'll accept.
Unfortunately, a voice singing out of nowhere didn't count as proof. Same for whatever instrument she was strumming.
Violence is the only truth spoken by the ones who step forward, those who willingly pay the price in blood.
As the painfully familiar voice continued to echo throughout the wastes, Thalius gripped his sword's hilt. ears pinned as that damned demoness taunted him from the snow. It did nothing to quell the taste of non-existent blood in his mouth, of the faint whispers that tugged ever so lightly to his ears despite his solitude. His continued trips to the barrier mountains had forced Thalius to adapt to the hallucinations, albeit his fellow Ardoni thought him mad when he spoke about it. "Ignore the witch," he tells himself. "You are Thalius Sandaris, champion of Sandaria. There is nothing that can change that." So why did those whispers agree?
Don't you understand? If you hurt the ones close to us, the bonds we forge and strife won't be torn apart so easily.
Thalius shook his head. "No, don't focus on them. You're here for the primes." They had been stolen without a trace, leaving only pitiful, if cunning replicas to deceive. There were oh so few reasons for anyone to take the primes, and fewer with skill to pull it off. What a convenience that the Voltaris, wretched ghosts they were, had both.
Only those aware of the price it costs for freedom can harness power paid for by blood that's spilled in battle.
I am righteous and just and pure. It took a minute to realize that he didn't say that. I must be, for what else can I be?
The weight of all your actions will one day overcome you. Will you withstand the consequence, or will you succumb to it?
A stony glare scorched the white landscape as Thalius rose, his ire and unease at the mockery of his voice overcoming his wariness. With brisk movements, he extinguished the fire with snow, unwilling to leave an obvious beacon to his location. The thinning smoke would make it easier to see, and his markings would provide all the light he needed to hunt this monster. "I know you're out there. Who are you?" "I am you."
Take up arms and march with me. In their eyes, what fears will I see? Hearts on fire, we clash in sword and steel. Rise up and be free.
"Liar," he growled, keeping vigilant as he unsheathed his blade. The music hadn't stopped, so either it was more witchcraft or an accomplice skilled at impersonating. In any respect, this would end in songfire and answers on whatever the Voltaris were scheming. "Show yourself," he demanded. In his mouth, the taste of blood became a downpour, making him gag. How different the world became when he rebounded. Swaths of chilled earth had been replaced by a frozen lake of pinkish red that reached past the horizon, rime coating every surface. For all intents and purposes, Thalius's cave was the only source of land in what looked uncomfortably like blood, making the Ardoni scoff. "An illusion? You think I'll fall for something so obvious?" No matter how horrific it was, Thalius was made of sterner stuff, fortified by years of purging Ardonia of its worst mistakes.
The wind brings the ashes of fallen men. A nation is freed, a tyrant dead. So what's this I see starting up again? Don't you dare betray me.
Is it an illusion if it's showing the truth? It came from his side. Thalius spun, expecting a mimicry of his form or trickery of any sort. In a way, he was not disappointed.
Too long I've resisted in silence the voices that govern with power and greed. I'll not watch my once comrades turn around and do the same unto me.
This is who we are. A knightly figure wearing plate armor composed of ice, concealing all but his eyes and height, identical to Thalius as his voice. At his hip peeked a sword, still in its scabbard, the baldric virtually invisible beneath all the frost. We are one and the same, our perfection and accomplishments in full display. Isn't it incredible? Thalius shot forward, only for his sword to smash and slide against his foe's unyielding breastplate. Momentum disrupted, Thalius widened his eyes as he activated his mobility flash, slamming against the cave's wall with a grunt. The entrance wasn't favorable, and he wanted solid earth behind his back, even if it hurt him. Righting himself with a huff, Thalius glared back at the false knight, raising his sword once more despite the burning pain his dominant arm was under. It wasn't dislocated, but the bruise didn't help with the song ache persisting in his bones.
Take up arms and turn to me. In your eyes, what fears will I see? We can thrill you, stumble to your knees, yet dare to be free.
As expected, the singing continued, because why not lighten this horror show with musical accompaniment? Why? For some reason, the knight had the audacity to sound confused. We said nothing wrong. You are a delusion cast by a witch of a child, Thalius snarled back. Nothing like this is what I wanted. Champions are guardians of the clans, striking at monsters before they can strike us. What part of this, he gestures his free arm at the cave entrance, is praiseworthy? Where did you even get the idea? The knight tilts his head to the left. Our soul, of course. Where else? A deafening crack drew Thalius's attention to the entrance, the ice splitting open to frothing waves that filled the air with a pungent, metallic tang. From the center of the churning lake emerged a skeletal fist, dripping with viscera coiled around its joints, stopping to unfurl a single finger at the Sindaris. What he had brushed aside as auditory hallucinations spoke a single clear word, male and female, young and old, a booming baritone and a crackling whisper.
Oh, you dare use me. Oh, you regret using me.
In the place.
In the bat of an eye, the wilderness was back to normal. No blood, no music, no illusions of any sort. The cave was once again empty, with Thalius's bruise the only sign the altercation occurred. The Sindaris breathing heavily with wide eyes. It was the first in a long time that Gallius got an apology from his brother. Chapter 3. Through Transmission. Two ancients shake hands beneath the boughs of a gilded tree, unbothered by the scalding heat.
Then we agree. Was there anything else? He is too well bred to laugh, but her answer has him restraining his mirth to the slightest tremor of his shoulders. Why did he even ask?
And I shudder and realize that I've been betrayed. Is this what you want? Corruption and power? Well, I won't stand for it. This is my hour. Take on these beats. I'm now friend to none.
If you think you're a hero, then die like one.
Oh, woe to thee, people of order. I hope your homes continue to smolder in that
Among the birch trunks, a little Felina followed the singing, entranced by the disturbance in their boring village. Ma had always told them not to follow strangers, but the lyrics...
I fled until silence was all I could hear. The voices once screaming now hummed in my ears. The cold, it was lonely, but I was alone. And I promised that I'd not let blood taint my home. But then came a message from my only friend. Oh, warrior, hide or else this is the end. They've bound up my wings and they hunt for your head. They promised me justice, but they'll see you dead.
The lady was singing about a great hero, maybe an Ender Knight. How could anyone who tells tales like that be so bad? When Emmy got back home, Ma would scold her, but all the kids would be so jealous that they couldn't hear it. Giggling to herself, she moseyed around the bushes all sneaky-like. She was so close to hear stomping?
They came to me with an armed battalion, held an axe to my innocent stallion, and said, now it is your turn to bow. See how the king has fallen now. They raised an anvil and laid me below. They thought to crush me, painful and slow, but I did live and I did flee, and I put my pick through the butcher's teeth.
No, not stomping. Shuffling, more like it, with one set of footsteps sounding lighter than the other. The patterns reminded Emmy of how the adults danced at the Harvest Festival, all partnered and kicking up the dust.
Oh, woe to thee, people of order, I hope your homes continue to smolder and that you'll never rise again, and woe to those who called me a friend.
There! That was a man's voice mixing with the lady's. A low, deep timbre made clearer as she closed the distance. He didn't take part in every verse, but that wasn't important. What was important was that the song was coming from a lush cave, the one that overran an old mine shaft. Ma said it used to be full of iron and copper, but now all that was there were monsters and water. Blech!
I returned from battle all tattered and worn, and stumbled upon a poor child forlorn. He told me his story, he told me his woes, as I thought up a plan for our mutual foes.
But some puddles weren't enough to stop Emmy. She was on a quest, just like the knights, and no water could stop her. Without hesitation, she jumped into cushioned moss, nose twitching from the spore blossoms and the sharp odor of rotten wood. No sneezing, of course. This was a quest, and questers didn't sneeze. But she did take a few glowberries. Aha! If she took them home, then everyone would have to believe her, and dummies like Dan could bite her ear if they still called her a liar.
I stealthily went to familiar lands as I gathered my weapons and laid out my plans. But when the poor child spoke with friends he had known, he abandoned our mission and left me alone. I gathered my hounds and made them devour the allies I once knew. Sweet friendships now sour, and let explosions rain from on high, and gladly bid my final goodbye. Oh, woe to thee, people of order, I hope your homes continue to smolder, and that you'll never rise again, and woe to those who called me a friend.
Slowly, Emmy delved in, savoring her adventure for all it was worth. Everywhere her optics ambled proclaimed the former mine had become one with nature. Oak supports transformed into trestles for vines and fungi, standing firm against the years. Drip leaves sprouted from muddied minecarts stuffed to the brim with water. Others, bedded by azaleas, had busted seams exposing grasping roots from split dirt. Clay and stone rifts, cleaved open by enterprising miners, dripped into a series of pools going deeper into the mine shaft, splashes resonating with sporadic chirps.
Were those bats? Mrs. Flight had shown her one when it got hurt crashing into her window, releasing it after healing. And it was so cute. She wanted one.
Oh, woe to thee, people of order, I hope your homes continue to smolder in that you'll never rise again. And woe to those who called me a friend.
Wait, why was her voice getting quieter? Was she finishing and leaving before Emmy could see her? With newfound urgency, the tortoiseshell leapt forwards as she taxed her ears to the fullest, taking care not to step on rusted nails camouflaged by the marsh undergrowth. She didn't want to get scolded without hearing more about the hero. That wasn't fair.
And now here I am, at my journey's end. Fate comes for us all, and I'm not exempt. But I will not weep, for I know in my mind the extent of the legacy I leave behind.
A small ledge, stocked with azaleas and shining vines, has her squirreled away just in time to see a short woman with a funny hat dancing like an allay, gracefully weaving around a tall man of Titan hair. Emmy couldn't see their faces from this height, but they looked like they were having fun with every swirl and sweep.
A most loyal legion, nor 10,000,000 strong, all of my deeds now exalted in song. And since I've abolished the domains of men, I ascend to the heavens to do it again. Oh, woe to thee, ye people of order, I hope your homes continue to smolder and that you'll never rise again. So long, you nerds, and may we meet again.
If Emmy had a tail, it would be wagging like mad as she watched the duo finish their dance, speaking softly in their shared embrace. Under the berry lights, the couple shimmered like a romance fable of giant and fae, unwilling to let go.
Emmy sneezed. They let go and stared straight at the foliage she was in. Ips.
Hello there. Do you want to come down? The lady asked kindly. Her husband, because who else could he be, scoffed with folded arms. He looked like he was going to yank her out if she didn't agree, so she did. Leaves stuck to her hair as Emmy crept from her hiding spot, ears tense against her skull with her eyes bouncing between the couple. Just to be on the safe side, she made sure to stick close to the lady. Who were you singing about?
You ruin our privacy, and this is the first thing out of your mouth. The woman's husband eyeballed Emmy like how Ma does whenever she's about to lecture her. Typical. If this is the next generation, then I weep for the future.
The Felina bristled, only to watch the lady poke her lofty counterpart. Be nice. In case you forgot, we used to be the next generation. Or did you forget what my uncle called us? Swapping her focus onto Emmy, the human gave an apologetic shake. A wonderful man who had many names, but we'll stick with Alex. He was an adventurer, a warrior, an entertainer who travels embedded themselves into the world. Funny, brilliant, and brave when everyone would have given up. He was the ideal role model for any seeking hope.
A delighted gasp escaped Emmy's mouth.
Was he a knight? What happened to him? Did he fight a wither? He didn't fight withers so much as created them to unleash at his enemies, so understandably he didn't get along with the authorities. Emmy's eyes grew wide, ignoring the man's disdainful huff. A few kings and higher powers were quite cross. Not that he cared. He was a little occupied living his best life while quoting literature and raising turtles. The storyteller chuckled, the glowberries outlining her sad smile. Unfortunately, he died from a disease, but not before funding the research to fight it, shooting a light into the future. A good man.
Wow! Contrary to the lady's muted voice, the child's eyes were replaced by pulsing stars. All the stories the adults told her were about listening to her elders and how the nights were. But this was new in the best way possible.
Can you tell me more? Please? A hand fell on her back, uncomfortably warm and rigid as her feet hung off the ground.
No.
The thoroughly exasperated man lumbered towards the sunlight, his wife giving Emmy a pearly grin as she followed.
Emboldened by his wife's presence, Emmy stuck out her tongue.
I was asking your wife, not you.
He's
We're
not
not
my
married.
husband.
They simultaneously replied, one amused and the other eyes ticking. Emmy blankly stared back. You're not? We're like friends, but a little more. Don't worry, it's not the first time we've heard that.
Emmy would argue that friends don't dance together in a hidden cave and bicker like the grannies and grampies did, but the woman's not husband's grip was hurting.
Can I still hear more stories?
To make extra sure this would work, Emmy pulled out big, pleading eyes, the kind that made adults, but not Ma, be less angry with her.
Her hopes were promptly crushed by a voice from above.
I thought children were supposed to be adorable. It seems I was mistaken.
Emmy hissed, claws popping out at his derision. Whatever words he wanted to say were rolled over by his partner. We'll need to head home soon, but far be it from me to not spread legend anew.
She pulled out 2 thick books. One was bound in pink leather with the title Technoblade, tribute to a modern Prometheus, embossed with a little crowned pig below. Its brother was in lime green with a white smiley face above the Dreamland, a disc falling down the right side of a blue sheep grazing peacefully on the bottom left.
I had quite a bit of free time up my sleeves. It has more than stories in there, like pictures and lyrics, but mostly about his life. Do you want it? Emmy couldn't say yes fast enough.
When the Felina got home, she went past her friends and villagers to curl up in bed, tearing through the tribute with a voracious appetite. When sleep finally overtook her, she dreamt of masked men digging up potatoes and roaring stands throwing down gold.
I still can't believe you made a book about him. Multiple, in fact.
It's mostly me copying what I recall from other works and using creative editing techniques to make sense. You should try it sometimes.
I am not explaining to my father or brother why I wrote an alternate history book when neither of them is religious. Besides, I have a new sapling to tend to and an industry to direct. Satisfaction radiated from his face despite his words. The distance will be suspicious, but random portals in the overworld were a nugget a dozen. Combined with his reputed wanderlust, it easily concluded to a lucky narrative that ended with the nether benefiting from the new mines.
Basically, you need to mine and craft?
Yes.
He stilled mid-nod. She didn't.
Should I grab my pickaxe? She did. He whirled just in time to see her smile like a mischievous child. I'm not a skilled miner, but I always did like knowing more about my materials.
Say another word, and I'll ban you from the nether permanently.
He'll personally rip it off his father's horns if it kept her from stitching another link between fiction and reality. He didn't care if she had a point. A line needed to be made, and she was crossing it.
A radiant smile soothed his ire as lava did a shivering Strider. I love you too, dear. Do you want another hug?
He didn't say yes. He didn't object either.